Here's something I wrote about morning glories. It's actually part of my um, part of my memoir, which I think should be an escape into a magical view of life, but laced with some reality. Here it is. Bright view bugles blow body bubbles into morning midnight just at dawn. That's a truthful account. Morning glories love the mornings. They appear early in the morning, just as the moon sets and the sun rises. And they are a bonny blue, Irish bonny blue. Today I wrote a post about differentiating between reality and myth, and how much we can allow mythology to pervade our memoir writing. Well, see, I don't believe that memoir writing that to write a memoir you have to write an encyclopedic account of your life. I think you need to take some trips into magic along the way. I am a mythological thinker. I'm a magical thinker. That's who I am. It's not what I try to be, it's just the way I perceive life. And I'm not going to separate that from my memoir, because then my memoir would not be truthful. Because the truth about me is that I probably elect to, or maybe I can't help myself, but I see life from a mythological standpoint. But I know that my memoir writing has to be honest, because if memoir is just that, it's basically an account of one's life. It's not an account of the life you wish you had. Boy, I could write a trip about that. But it's really your life. And if you need to, for whatever reason, frame that in magical thinking, or if you just can't help yourself, if that's the way you see it, then you need to write it that way. Write the truth from your own lips. Today I talk about how my garden is my sanctuary. It's my shelter. It's where I go to hide from the harsh reality of people who do not see life through fairy glasses. They see life in harsh reality. I take that back. They are mythological. They are living a mythological life, but they don't know it's mythological. The Old South is a myth. I went to college at Ole Miss, and one of my friends, actually he was older than I am, got me a job working at the Faulkner House. He called Ole Miss Old Myth, because the whole South is a myth. The Deep South is a myth. A lot of people in this country are controlled by mythological thinking. I think it's good that we can look at life more mythologically and more magically, but we need to separate ourselves from the myth. Even as we write about it, express yourself magically, but know when the magic ends and the truth begins. Well, I built this garden shortly after I moved back to Mississippi, which I probably should never have done, because I am not a Mississippian, and I've fought most of my life trying to be more Mississippian. You see, I grew up up the river from Mississippi, quite some distance, up past Memphis. Memphis is about an hour and a half from Ole Miss. I lived about an hour and a half from Memphis, north of Memphis, on the river, the same river that Mark Twain boated down and wrote Huckleberry Finn, about which he wrote Huckleberry Finn, the same river, just a different part of the river, a different neck of the woods, so to speak. So my myths are not the same myths as those of people who live in Mississippi. In where I lived, the cotton grew just as tall and maybe taller than it grows in Mississippi, because our land was fabulous. Our ground was fabulous and fertile. Yesterday I was talking to a new friend who told me that she knew a lot of people who had leased land where I live, because the cotton growing there is so fabulous, and soybeans and other things now. When I was a child, it was mainly cotton picking country, and I picked cotton when I was a child. Very quickly after I moved to Mississippi, I realized that Mississippi ladies don't pick cotton. So I quit telling that story. But it's still deep within me. It's part of my myth. It's part of my own memoir. And there's even a mythology, I even have a magical thinking about picking cotton, and a lot of magical things what happened while I was picking cotton. I've written a picture book about picking cotton, and about somewhere along the banks of the Mississippi River. There's a brief enchanted moment as the moonlight turns to dawn, when bullfrogs hoop and holler. No, it's when there's a brief enchanted moment as the midnight turns to day, when the bullfrogs hoop and holler and the gators let him play. That's a magical way to say some of the things that I feel. The gator is reality. The gator is something that seeks to destroy my own comfort, and I'm the bullfrogs that want to hoop and holler. And, that story is a picture book, actually, that I've written. I can't find. I actually hadn't looked very hard, but I need to find someone to publish that book. But it's counter appropriate to many of the publishers, because the publishers buy into the myth that only black people pick cotton. Well, I'm as white as I can be with blonde hair, and I picked cotton. Well, that doesn't fit into other people's myths. As I said, we need to know when to allow our myths to recede and our truth to prevail. Well, this past year back in Mississippi, I have realized that once again, I'd played into a myth. My myth that Mississippi had grown, and Mississippi wasn't the way it used to be, and that I would fit in here readily. Well, that dissolved about the second week I was here. And as the election grew up to 2024 grew nearer and nearer, I realized that I needed to recede into a full-grown cage of my own making. I didn't get out of my house for months. I ordered everything, and I was a recluse. I decided when the election ended the way it ended, I decided I need to leave. Garden and all, I need to leave. I can't live in the confines of my garden. Even though I have brought some of it out here to find more light, I need people. I just didn't think there were any people like me in this town. So I braved the elements and went to one of the local eateries, and the proprietor said, "Where have you been? I hadn't seen you in months." She said, "Have you been sick?" And I said, "Yes." but not the kind of sickness that you're thinking about. And I explained that I was just sick of the game, sick of not being able to tolerate the game, sick of living where there was no one like me, and that I was soon be leaving this town. She said, "Oh, please, before you go, try my church, because I think you'll find people like you there." And I said, "I don't think so, but I'm up for a good game, good try. I'll try your church." A few weeks ago, I started attending a tiny mission church, a tiny mission Episcopal church. Well, Episcopalians have been I've agreed with the Episcopal viewpoint on politics for many years. I was Episcopalian for many years, but for whatever reason, I never thought about going to that Episcopal. I thought, wow, that is really tiny. I know there's no one like me in that church, but I went. And I tell the story about how in college I found a church out in the country, and how that church, that surrounded by the forest, became my sanctuary when I needed to get away. And when I first moved here, a friend helped me, because I needed to go find that church. I needed to go find that sanctuary in the forest. The forest are the wild woods. She carried me to one church after another, but none of them were just right. I said, here are the criteria. This is the church. This is the steeple. Open the doors, and here are your people. Well, first of all, we didn't find any churches with steeples. We only found old country churches that were mere shelters in the storm. About 2 blocks from my house, the perfect church was sitting there. It is a church with a steeple, and when I opened the door, there were my people.